Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. And today, we're being joined by Ellen Goodwin, author of Done: How to Work When No One Is Watching. Ellen, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Are you ready to begin?
Let's do it.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
I would say establish a writing or editing ritual. I pull this in, I talk about productivity. That's what my book is about. And having a ritual takes away anything that you need to get motivated, because if we rely on motivation, you're not going to write when you're not feeling like it. But if you have a ritual, whether that is you have an automatic time when you start writing, or you put on a piece of clothing, even a hat or a piece of jewelry, or turn on some music that says to you, this is my writing time, you're going to write. For me, it's sitting down at the table with a cup of coffee, and I turn on binaural focus beats. I have my headphones in, and I only listen to that music when I'm writing. And if for whatever reason I get disrupted, I have to turn the music off, because the only time I can listen to that is during writing time. John Waters, the writer and producer and actor, he puts on a brown sweater whenever it's time to be creative, to do writing, things like that. So it's the same thing. Have a ritual. Just like if you were going to go play baseball, you'd have a ritual of you're putting on your uniform. Figure out what is a uniform for you, either mental, physical, and sit down and write.
So tell me about the music you listen to. You said it was binaural beats. Is that correct?
Binaural beats, BINAURAL, and there's a whole science to it, and it has to do with the megahertz, the way that the waves are going through. So you have to listen with headphones, and the different kinds of music are set up so that sometimes it's for focus, sometimes it's for relaxation, but they're different brain waves. They they work with your brain waves in different ways.
I love that. It's just like you want certain music when you work out, you want certain music for when you're writing your book.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
For me, and I published my book. I went the Amazon route, so I self-published. For me, it was getting the moving parts to all go together, because I wrote the book, and it's kind of heavy on charts that you can fill in. So it's got actionable things that you should do, but it also refers back and forth to different pages. So I ended up hiring a company to do the ebook for me, because there were so many moving parts. If you're back in the reference section, it would talk about, go to page 207 to follow this. And so I had this company, and there was just a comedy of errors. I think they were a lovely company, but there wasn't the communication. And it took over 30 days to get the ebook out after the paperback had been published already. So going forward, I think I would make sure that I have those parts working together before anything gets published.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And, deadlines are critical. One thing I take great pride in with my hybrid publishing company is in the 5 years that we work with our clients, we've never missed a deadline. And the reason I mention that is because as a writer myself and publishing my own books when I started, I knew how important it was to make sure that you get everything out on time, and especially having the Kindle and the paperback and making sure that they are in sync, because there's not really a lot of difficult things about publishing, but there's just so many tedious little things that, as you mentioned, if one thing goes a little bit awry, it can totally jack up your launch.
Yes, Exactly. So technically I had, the paperback came out in 2019 and the ebook came out in 2020. Same book, but I guess every lesson, everything happens and you take the lesson away from it.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Speaking. It's pretty easy. Speaking, getting out in front of groups,
Yep.
telling the stories that might be in the book, or just helping them. Like I said, my book's about productivity, how to work when no one's watching. So talking to writers groups, freelancers, people that are working at home. And now of course it's when we had the shutdown, it was everyone was working at home, but getting in front of groups, talking, not selling the book so much, but just talking about it and creating the interest where people wanted to come back and get the book.
Now, you mentioned different groups. You talked about writers groups. What other organizations and groups have you spoken at during the launch phase a few months back?
Oh, during the launch. So, like I said, so writers, freelancers, at the time, remote workers, and actually speaking with HR departments, I'm talking about their remote workers, and librarians. Interestingly enough, that was one. And just 1 second, it's going to come to me. People that were doing like websites and programmers and coders and things like that are at home, or at the they're working remotely. They're not with other people, and in situations where it's really easy to put things off.
So essentially, you're talking about speaking virtually in front of different groups.
A lot of them were virtual. Yes.
I love that. And of course, our new best friend, Zoom.
Our new best friend, Zoom. Yes. What would we do without it?
I love you mention that, because the thing is, you have to pivot. And that's probably one of the biggest themes that when I've talked to people on the show and when we were doing the second edition of our virtual summit recently, the main thing is, how do you pivot during this? And the main thing I said is speak virtually, because Rotary clubs, I'm the future president-elect of my own club here in Arlington, and one of my jobs is to bring in speakers to the club. So we bring them in virtually every week. And it's one of those things where it's a little different. I typically don't recommend they do a PowerPoint. Just, speak from the heart, talk about some key talking points, talk for about 15 to 20 minutes. And those talks have been great since we started doing that. But the thing is, there are clubs and organizations out there that are looking for speakers in this virtual environment. So yeah, you may not be able to necessarily go and sell the book in the back of the room, but maybe you can speak about it at the event, and maybe there'll be a few people that are interested in potentially buying the book that you could potentially autograph and mail it to them, personalize it, and then also utilize it for your back end. So it's just really thinking about what things you can do in this environment.
Absolutely. And I'd be happy to talk to your Rotary Club.
All right. I think I just recruited you.
Sure.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know, what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, I actually have two books, but when I tell you what they are, you'll understand why I'm saying two of them. And they're both from Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art and Turning Pro, because I think both of those books, I mean, it could actually be one book because they're both such slim volumes, but they are so strong. Everything that's on the pages, I think it speaks to me, because The War of Art talks about overcoming the resistance. And the resistance is, of course, our own brain when it comes to writing, when it comes to being creative. And it's the resistance that we have to overcome. And it's the same thing when I was talking about having a ritual when it comes to writing. You want to find the thing that tells your brain, this is when we're going to do this, and I'm not going to listen to any arguments, because that's what the resistance is. And so The War of Art, Turning Pro, they both just confirm what you need to do to get the words out, to be the creative person you need to be the writer, and to know that, yeah, you're going to resist, you're going to procrastinate, but you don't have to. And when you know how to overcome it, you're going to get the work done.
And what was the author? Who's the author again for these two books?
Stephen Pressfield. He's written lots of books. He wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm familiar with the War of Art. I have not heard of Turn In Pro, but that's definitely of interest. I want to check those out myself.
Yeah, I just find him fascinating. He has a strong work ethic where he goes up to his writing shed and he's there for 4 hours every day. And he's like, sometimes I just churn out gibberish, but I have to be there for 4 hours. I have to do the work for 4 hours.
Yep, it's the power of habit.
Absolutely.
Well, Ellen, for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote, "Enjoy every sandwich." It's by Warren Zevon. He said it on an interview with David Letterman just months before he died. And the question was, how are you going through all of this stuff? He died from pancreatic cancer. I've just learned the importance of enjoying every sandwich, which is, don't focus on those monumental things in your life, because when you focus on those, you're missing the important things, the small things, like every sandwich that you have, every moment that you have. I love this quote so much. I have it in big letters above my kitchen sink.
Well,
so everyone sees it.
Well, it reminds me of another person we lost to pancreatic cancer, and that was Randy Pouchman last lecture, talking about the, you can't change the cards you're dealt, but how you play them. And I lost a cousin to pancreatic cancer. So it really is one of those things where, they realize, there's not a lot of time left, so enjoy it. And I love the fact you talked about enjoying every sandwich.
Oh, yeah. Every sandwich. I think it's a reminder that, we'd like to, hey, wow, I just wrote a book. I launched a book, but that's a big thing. But you know what? I just saw an awesome flower in my yard, or I enjoyed a sandwich with my husband. Mm-hmm. It's seeing those things.
That's what it's about. Well, Ellen, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Oh, okay. I'm at ellengoodwin.com is my website, and on most of the socials, Ellen Goodwin, Facebook, ellengoodwin.com, LinkedIn, EE Goodwin.
Ellen, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.